Good morning, church. Yeah. So I think every time I am given an opportunity to share God's word, I make some allowances for myself. One, I mostly and almost always speak from the Old Testament. Okay. Second thing is I use a lot of stories in my sharing because I feel that's a way I can make it more relatable. And lastly, I'm not good at keeping to time. So I will be conscious, but I just want to just go with the way the Lord leads me. And so for today, I thought we'll turn our Bibles to Genesis chapter 19. Okay. I had a very interesting experience preparing for this. I always have this last minute anxiety, okay, like, am I able to really deliver what God is putting in my heart? So this time I thought I will be well prepared front, and I thought I should start something 2 weeks earlier. And I started 2 weeks earlier, but the topic kept changing and changing and changing until I felt on Saturday afternoon, God began to impress strongly a particular thing in my heart. And so we're going to we're going to turn our Bibles to Genesis chapter 19. Okay, and I'm going to read it for you. I've asked Merslin to help us with that passage in the slides. So if you don't have your Bibles, you can follow that. Okay, we'll read from verse 1 till verse 29. Okay. Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them. He bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, "Hear now, my lords, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go on your way." And they said, "No, we will spend the night in the open square." But he insisted strongly. So they turned into him and entered his house. Then he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Now before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them carnally." So Lot went out to them through the doorway, shut the door behind him, and said, "Please, my brethren, do not do so wickedly. See now, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Only do nothing to these men, since this is the reason they have come under the shadow of my roof." And they said, "Stand back." Then they said, "This one came in to stay here, and he keeps acting as a judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. But the men reached out their hands, pulled Lot into the house with them, and shut the door. And they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they became weary trying to find the door. Then the men said to Lot, "Have you anyone else here, son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city? Take them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, "Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city." But to his sons-in-law he seemed to be joking. When the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, "Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city." And while he lingered, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, the hands of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. So it came to pass, when they had brought them outside, he said, "Escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be destroyed." Then Lot said to them, "Please, no, my lords. Indeed, now your servant has found favor in your sight." Sorry. "And you have increased your mercy, which you have shown to me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, lest some evil overtake me and I die. See now, the city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Please let me escape there, and my soul shall live." And he said to him, "See, I have favored you concerning this thing also, in that I will not overthrow the city for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there." Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. Then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens, for he overthrew those cities, all the plains, all the inhabitants of the city, and what grew on the ground. But his wife looked back behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. Then he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and towards all the land of the plain, and he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land which went up like the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. Okay, so I just hope that while reading this passage, you were able to closely follow this story. And it is a very familiar story. For most of you who've grown in Christian homes, you know, this is like a Sunday school story. We hear a lot about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Then we hear the story of Lot's wife turning back and her becoming a pillar of salt. This is something we hear a lot. But I just want to just talk about something that God placed in my heart. I was focusing on Genesis during our church 21 day of fasting and prayer, and I found this chapter very fascinating, and I'll come to it why. Okay, so the background to this chapter is this. You know, God told Abraham, "Leave your country, leave your father's household, and go to the land I'll show you." So Abraham, in obedience, he took his wife along with him. He also took Lot, because Lot was his brother's son, and his brother had died, and probably he decided to bring Lot under his wings, you know, and take care of him. And so all of them journey, and they are on a journey. And as they are traveling, an incident happens when they are camped near a place called Bethel. Right? It's between Bethel and Ai. Somewhere there, they are camped. And Abraham has this habit. Wherever he goes, he builds an altar to the Lord. He pitches a tent, and that's his style. He will call on the name of the Lord. You'll notice that pattern in Abraham, a man who was so devoted to God. And you can always see he was called the friend of God, father of faith, so many terms given to Abraham. You know, such a pleasant man. And he had also taken Lot along with him, and they come to this place. Now what happens is God blesses Abraham, and I'm sure as a result of Abraham, even Lot is blessed immensely. You know, and they prosper so much. It says that land in Genesis chapter 13, it says the land could not contain them, because their wealth was so much, right? And they were and what eventually happened was there was a quarrel that erupted between Abraham's servants and Lot's servants. And at that point, gentleman Abraham, he goes up to Lot and he says, "Let's not quarrel." Maybe our servants are quarreling. Let's not quarrel. The whole land that you can see from here is before you. You choose whatever you want. If you choose the right, I'll take the left. if you choose the left, I'll take the right. And he just gives this offer to Lot. And Lot looks around. It's very beautiful in Genesis chapter 13. You can read that. Lot looked and saw the whole plain of Jordan. And the Bible says it looked like a well-watered garden, like the garden of the Lord, almost like the Garden of Eden. It was so rich. It was so, prosperous. And it's, and he looked. It almost felt, it's like this. The eye see what the heart loves, right? He wanted probably prosperity and he wanted to really thrive well. Nothing wrong with that. But, he saw the whole place and it was so rich, so fertile. And he said, I'll go this way. And Abraham sends him off joyfully. But the verse eventually after that, Genesis 13, where it captures this incident, it also says Sodom was a very wicked land. As much as it was prosperous, it was also very wicked with a lot of sinful practices. Okay, so Lot, he moves in and he settles down in Sodom. And I think he's very well established in Sodom. From the way the story goes, looks like he's very established. And after the separation, God also appears to Abraham and says, see, all the land you see, Abraham was gracious to let Lot have his portions, but God, after the separation, comes to Abraham and says, whatever you see, I'll give it to you. I'll multiply your descendants. Wherever you set your foot, I'll give you this land. And that's how God blesses Abraham. Now fast forward and come to Genesis chapter 19. Okay, here the wickedness of Sodom was increasing so much and the outcry was so much. If you read in Genesis chapter 18, I'm just giving you this context because I want to come to what the point that I want to emphasize on. It was increasingly becoming wicked and the outcry had come up to the Lord. Okay, so you have Abraham living in the, I think, near the oaks of Mamre, or they say the great trees of Mamre. That's where he was staying. Lot was in Sodom. And 3 visitors come, of which 2 are angels and 1 is the Lord himself. And it goes on to say that, they have a conversation. Abraham invites them in, takes care of them, feeds them well, and they tell Abraham, we have an announcement to make. Next year, by this time when we come, your wife will have a child. And then they laugh, and all that stories. Okay, I'm going to fast forward quickly. I'm not going to go into the details. But then what happens is, there is this beautiful verse where he says, Abraham had such a great relationship with God that he looks at Abraham and says, God says this. Then the men rose from there, looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them on their way. This is in chapter 18. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Truly, God considered Abraham as a friend because he was saying, shall I hide from Abraham? And he's almost talking out loud what I'm doing. Since Abraham, then he goes on to give an explanation, and then he tells Abraham, the outcry has come to me, and I've come here to visit and see for myself and to bring destruction upon the land of Sodom. Okay? And then in that context, you will find chapter 19 starts. And you will find a very interesting observation in chapter 19. Chapter 18, 3 strangers visited. Chapter 19, can one of you read what does verse 1 say? Right? Okay, so you find that in chapter 18, to visit Abraham, there were 3 people, 2 angels and the Lord himself. Then after that, the Lord stayed back and had a conversation with Abraham while the 2 angels were sent on a mission to go to Sodom. right? And that's how the story starts. Because Sodom was so wicked. People were exceedingly wicked. It says they were sexually immoral, they were perverse, they practiced, things that were contrary to natural affections, like how it says in Romans chapter 1. Because people were not willing to retain the knowledge of God, men gave themselves over to unnatural relationship. And that's exactly what was happening in Sodom. It was so wicked, and it was increasingly becoming, it was reeking in filth and sin. And the outcry was coming out to God. And the people of Sodom, they did not even try to hide their sin. They were open. Doesn't it paint a picture of the world that we are living in today? They did not even try to hide their sin. They were in open rebellion to God. There was no feeling of guilt, no feeling of shame. And while I was reading this passage, I felt, oh my God, the world is increasingly moving in the same direction as Sodom and Gomorrah. God is going to come soon. The time is near, right? And that's exactly, the world is spiraling into more wickedness and wickedness. And this is exactly what was happening. People's hearts were hardened, okay? And they gave themselves over to violence and sexual immorality. And sodomy, and these words are associated with the land of Sodom because that's the kind of sin it gave to the world as, And so one example of their wickedness is captured in Genesis chapter 19. We read that, right? So these two men, probably they looked like very royal, aristocrat people visiting Sodom. And Lot was sitting at the entrance of the gate, and these two men come. They come, and Lot meets them, and he urges them, please come home, and stay with me. And initially, these men, from the conversation, it says they were not planning to stay they were planning to stay in the open square. But Lot insists that they come and stay with him. And so they come to his house, and Lot, as usual, shows immense hospitality to them, takes care of them. And in the night, there are these knocks on the door. And Bible says, very sadly, it says like this. Okay, so it says, now before they lay down, so night, they're almost going to bed, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all people from every quarter surrounded the house. And they called out to Lot, and they were saying, bring those men out. Bring those men out, because we want to know them carnally. Can you see the level of wickedness? So ugly and so disgusting even to think about this scenario. You have a guest at home and the world is coming. Send them out, send them out. We want to know these men carnally. And this is exactly what was happening. And the wickedness was so huge. And Lot, he goes out and he says, please, no, they are my guests. No, don't do anything to them. They've come under my roof, and it's my job to protect them. And he's trying to negotiate with them. Okay, and they're not willing to listen. They're like, send the men out. Then he says, okay, fine. He does another terrible thing. He says, okay, fine. If you want, I can send you my virgin daughters. You take them. I can't imagine thinking, saying something like that. But I guess at that point in time in history, they considered women of a lesser value, or he must have thought, some way he has to preserve his honor of taking care of his guests well. I don't know what, but he was making negotiations, with the people of Sodom and saying, please, just leave them alone. Don't do anything to them. If you want, you can take my daughters. And then they get angry with him and say, you're an outsider. And who are you to come and you're trying to judge over us? Is it? And see what we are going to do to you. And then they try to, push him against the door or whatever. The angels open the door. I'm sure it was a supernatural act. They pull Lot in, close the door, blind the men, and, Lot is inside the house. Okay, and so you can see this is an example of how wicked, how dirty, how filthy they were, right? And it just doesn't stop there. You find that the angels tell, see, we've come here on a mission. We've been sent by God to destroy the city because the wickedness of the city is so great. But if you have anyone here in this place, you bring them to, you can take them along with you and escape. Okay, so if you have your sons-in-law, and all of that, please bring them in, and we can, you need to escape because there's going to be a judgment upon this land. And it also says that so Lot went and spoke to his sons-in-law, and to them it seemed to be like a joke, right? So that's exactly how the world treats God's people, if you notice. The world is becoming increasingly wicked on one side, and as God's children, we cannot enter into a negotiation with the world because it doesn't value those. Their standards are completely contrary to God's laws, right? And if you talk to them about the impending judgment, you go out in the public square to them and say, Jesus is going to come soon and all of that, they'll call you a joker, just like how they thought about Lot, right? It is in this situation, it was the situation then in the land of Sodom at that point in time. But the verse that caught my attention was verse 16. Okay, so the men said to Lot, we'll start from verse 13. Yeah, we'll start from verse 14. So Lot went out, spoke to verse 15. When the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. And while he lingered, right? And while he lingered, I think the word lingered stood out so strongly to me, because it gave me an impression that Lot, he didn't want to leave. He didn't take the urgency of leaving that place very seriously. God was trying to rescue him. Angels had come here on a rescue mission. They wanted to take him out of this land and then bring destruction and bring that impending judgment on the city. But you find here that even as they say, telling him early morning, before the sun is up, take your wife, take your children, and the angels are urging him to leave, but it says Lot lingered. Now, and I was trying to think, why did he linger so long? Probably his heart was in Sodom. Probably the prosperity of Sodom enticed him, because Bible says he was a righteous soul. In 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 7 and 8, it says, he was a righteous soul, but he was tormented by the wickedness around him, right? He was okay to stay longer, even if it meant at the cost of his life. It just felt he was lingering around in that place. He just didn't want to flee, and I felt that he was very reluctant in moving out, and I felt sometimes this is what happens with us followers of Christ. Sometimes what happens is, just like Sodom enticed Lot, the world entices us. It offers us prosperity. It offers us prominence. It offers us power. It offers us so many things. And we think it offers us unlimited pleasure. And we think it all comes at free of cost. But no, it comes at the cost of your soul. And this is exactly what was happening with Lot. The Sodom had offered him prosperity. Probably he had a prominent position. That's why he was sitting at the city gate. He could sit there because city gate was a place where the elite of the city would sit and discuss matters of the village or city, whatever. And probably it gave him a very, good standing in the society. He had all the money that he wanted. He could lead a comfortable life. Though the wickedness tormented his soul, though he was a righteous man, the enticement of Sodom, the prosperity, maybe not the wickedness, kept him hooked to Sodom, that even when destruction was coming upon the city of Sodom, and even when angels were sent on a mission to pluck him out and rescue him, he was lingering. And I want us to think in our lives also, right? What is enticing you and pulling you in a different direction? Sometimes it could be just a relationship. In Gen Z terms, we have terms called situationships, friendships, so many ships. Maybe it is enticing you. Maybe, some place that you're going to. Maybe something like a habit in your life that God wants you to let go. But you're very reluctant. You're lingering in that space long. I don't know what it is with each one of you, right? Because it is very specific to what gratifies us more. Or maybe there are some unclean passions that we are pursuing. We want God on one side, like Lot, as a righteous man. He had God on one side. On the other side, we don't want to give up on the pleasures the world could offer. Right? And you find that in your walk with the Lord, like one scholar said, Lot was a saved soul but a wasted life. Do you feel like that about your life? Are you a saved soul but living a wasted life that accomplishes nothing for the kingdom of God? When God comes, all that you do in this world will pass away, but what you do for him will stand. Right? And how is your life? Where are you lingering? God says, and you find that Lot was very reluctant to move out of that place. He was very reluctant to obey. The angels were urging him, take your daughters. And it says, by the mercy of God, the angels, there were two people. God didn't come because maybe he couldn't withstand the outcry of Sodom, or maybe he didn't have a friendship with Lot because Lot's friendship was more with the world, right? God just sent his angels and said, for the sake of Abraham, for the sake of Lot's righteousness, just bring him out. And here he was very reluctant to step out. He was still holding on, and lingering around. What is lingering? I looked through the definitions. It says being in a place for a long time, slowing down. Sometimes God will say certain sinful habits in your life, you've got to put a decision and say no. Here you find Lot was so reluctant, and we linger in that space. And what happens? It grows on you. It takes over you. It torments your soul like Lot, a righteous man. He was also constantly tormented by the wickedness around him. Right? So ask yourself, where are you lingering? Are you lingering in a place that is forbidden for you to be? Are you lingering in a relationship, a friendship, or a situationship where you're not meant to be? Are you lingering in certain habits that are like these small termites eating you and making you weak? And there are people, probably God sends your way like the angels were sent to pull you out, and you're reluctant and you're resisting them. I don't know what it is, but I just want to throw this as a reality check with your life. Are you in a constant state of, like Lot, a man whose soul was saved, but you feel that your life is meaningless and it's wasted? Then check your life. What are the drivers in your life? What are the motivations in your life? Where are you lingering longer? And are you reluctant to respond to what God is doing in your life? And that's exactly what you find he was very reluctant to obey. And I think the only antidote to reluctance is demonstrating willingness. I heard this somewhere in a very spiritual formation course. Information doesn't bring transformation, but the practice of these habits, brings transformation, right? So you can hear 100 sermons. You can hear 100 people coming and telling you, don't do this, this is wrong, this is not the place you should be lingering. But if you don't take action, you will not see change. And I feel the only antidote to reluctance is willingness. And you see that, right? Maybe we can start practicing, demonstrating willingness in small ways to obey God. And if you notice Abraham, he never withheld anything from God, even his own son, right? God told him, through this son I will give you, I'll make your descendants like the sands of the sea, right? And yet when God asked, he believed that God will provide a way out, but even if God didn't, he was willing to offer his Isaac. That is how he was, which is so contrary to Lot. He couldn't let go, right? So what we find is the only antidote to your reluctance is to develop a heart posture that is willing to obey God in every little thing. And I like this interesting story. I read this to Praveen and Nitya while I was staying at their place. This is from the book of Helen Roseveare. It's called The Living Sacrifice. Okay, and she talks about his right to demand. Helen Roseveare is such a fierce missionary for God. She was a missionary in the Congo. She went through so much suffering, and she felt God had invited her into the privilege of suffering, because she said, my sacrifice cannot match the sacrifice of the cross of Calvary. Right? And she felt the suffering that she was enduring was a privilege, and God was inviting into that privilege. And she talks about this incident in Congo where she was a missionary. They found that one of their source of livelihood in Congo was, they lived in a very tribal belt, and one of the source of livelihood were these palm trees. And suddenly they found that there were these brightly colored birds that would come and, chip at the trees' leaves and, chip at the trees, and literally making the tree useless, and, you can't generate income out of it. So what she told the kids in the village was, if everyone could shoot down the bird, she would give them a penny. And then she increased the amount to $10 because birds were coming a lot. And the kids, what they would do is they would take every, plant that they see, like an orange tree or whatever is coffee plant, whatever. They would take sticks from those plants, and they will sharpen it into an arrow, and they will shoot it at those birds. And that's the process that was going on. But eventually, even that became challenging because they survived on the income from the coffee beans, from the fruits that they got from the plants. So eventually, there was this beautiful acacia tree. So in this Congo, where there was a thick overgrowth of greenery across, the only thing for her as a foreigner in that place that broke the monotony of greenery that she saw was this acacia tree with bright yellow color flowers. And it almost seemed like she had to preserve those other plants that were giving income from getting cut and chopped down and to be made into arrows. She had to allow them to, chop down the acacia tree, take sticks from that, make it into a sharp arrow to bring down the birds. And she says this is what happens. And this is how God began to talk to her about the willingness and about, yielding to God from that particular incident. Not far to find, she says, everywhere we found children. Okay, wait, sorry. Yeah. So to be transformed, was I willing? Am I willing? For the whittling, sandpapering, stripping process necessary in my Christian life. Because when they had to make the arrows, they had to, sandpaper it and do a whole lot of work on it to make it into a very sharp arrow. And so she says, to be thus transformed was I willing. Am I still willing for the whittling, sandpapering, stripping process necessary in my Christian life? The multiple pulling off of leaves, the ruthless pulling off of leaves and flowers might include for us doing without a television set or washing machine or remaining single. She was a single missionary. I'm not advocating this here, but I hope you get the point. In order to see a job done, re-evaluating the worthiness of the ambition to be a good doctor. She was a doctor. The snapping up of thorns might include drastic dealing with hidden jealousies, unknown prides, giving up prized rights in leadership and administration. The final stripping of the bark might include lessons to be learned regarding death to self, self-defense, self-pity, self-justification, self-sufficiency, all the mechanisms of preventing the hurt of too deep involvement. Am I prepared for the pain? And then she goes on to say, can I such minor sacrifices in the great sacrifice of Calvary where Christ gave all for me? Can I see the apparent cost as minimal compared to the reality of the gain? Do I accept his right to demand my willingness to pay such a price in order to enter into the privilege and joy of being used in his purpose? So I think the only antidote to reluctance is willingness. And here, I'm not quoting the story of Abraham, who was willing to offer his son. I'm quoting the story of a young missionary woman who went all alone, a missionary doctor, to Congo, right? And she played a big role in evangelizing and bringing many people from the tribe to the faith. So, So, just want to encourage you to think deeper in your life. Where are you resisting God? Where are you reluctant? Where are you lingering? And you find that the story continues further. It says that, when morning, we'll go back to verse 16. And while he lingered, the men took hold of his hands, his wife's hands, the hands of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. So it came to pass, when they brought them outside, that he said, escape for your life. So the angels told Lot, now he's dragged out, brought out of the city. It looked like 2 angels, Lot in one hand, 1 daughter in one hand. Another angel probably took Lot's wife in one hand and Lot's other daughter in the other hand, dragged them out of the city. And he said, please escape for your life. And it says, very interesting, it says, escape for your life. Do not look behind, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be destroyed. And our man Lot comes here. Please know, my Lord. Sometimes this is how our response is to God. Sometimes God pulls us out and now we go into an excuse mode, right? He says, no, my Lord, indeed now your servant has found favor in your eyes. You have increased your mercy, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, lest some evil overtake me and I die. So let me stay in the plains. In essence, that's what he was saying. I cannot go up to the mountains. I'll stay in the plains itself. And it says that one small city called Zoar was spared. Okay, and Lot lived there. But Sodom caught up with him later in that city. We know the story of Lot, right? In the end, how it ends. So I just want to encourage you today, even as you look at your own walk with the Lord. Are you in a place where you are so yielded to God? God can use a life that is only fully yielded. If a life is not fully yielded and fully willing, You know, if a life is reluctant, if it is lingering, if it is giving excuses and having around, God cannot use us. The bare minimum that will happen is probably you will be saved, but your life will be a wasted life. And that is not what we want the story of our lives to be. Our nation needs to see and hear the gospel of Christ. You know, the length and breadth of the country needs to hear. And if we are going to live in states of compromise, lingering with the world, wanting God, and not yielding to God, we can't do anything for God. God cannot count on us. Right? We really need, if we want to be a firebrand for God, somebody who wants to take this world by storm for God, you need to be a person who is yielded and who is willing to go the extent God wants you to go. For each one, the journey is different. For each one, the path is different. But you need to work out your life with God. Right? So I just want to encourage you with this. I just thought I'll leave this as a small thought. But before closing, I wanted to share with you the story of Bishop of Smyrna, Polycarp. This is Evie's very favorite story. She's always scared of the story, but she loves the story and she cries when she reads it. But I just thought I want to read this so that I can encourage you, like, what do we want? I really want you to go the extra mile for God. We are living in end times. You can see that everything Bible prophesied. You know, when I was a little kid, when I read the book of Revelations, I never even believed that those things could come into place. But now when you see the advancement in technology, with change in the geographical things and the, changes in the world that is happening, the time is coming near. Bible says, you know, behold, when you hear rumors of war, when you hear earthquakes, when you hear destruction, famine, pestilence, know that the time is near. Right? Know that I'm coming soon. And it's very important, unlike Lot, we need to respond with urgency to the call that God is placing on our lives. We will do nothing for God if we linger in the world and, you know, try to linger in the world. So I just want to encourage you by reading the small story from Polycarp's life. I know Ashwin recently spoke about it in one of the sermons, but I really thought it's a very beautiful reminder, and every time I read, it also moves me. Okay? So it talks about Polycarp was taught by Apostle John, you know, disciple of Jesus, and he became the bishop of Smyrna. Smyrna, they say, currently is located in Turkey. Okay, so he was a bishop, early fathers of the Christian faith. So what had happened was he had gone to Rome to meet with another bishop of Rome to discuss certain matters regarding the Easter festival. And while he had gone on that journey, they came to know, the Christians there came to know that the Roman soldiers are coming out to catch, because they were very intrigued by the people of the faith. You know, their philosophy was so contrary to the Roman philosophy, and they found them constantly as a threat. And knowing one of the church leaders were there, they sent a group of Roman soldiers to catch Bishop Polycarp. And the Christians who were there came to know of it and secretly took him and hid him in a farmhouse. But while he was hidden in the farmhouse, he was really troubled at the fact that he was escaping and he was hiding. Mind you, he was 86 years old, okay? And he was hiding there and he was praying. And one morning, I want to read this again for you. Okay. One morning while, okay. So it says, one morning while he was praying in the room, the soldiers had come in. One of the soldiers pounded on the farm door. And this time Polycarp, even though other Christians would have urged him to escape, he refused to escape. They came and asked, where is Polycarp? He opens the door for them, 86-year-old man, and he says, here I am. The soldiers rush through the door. You've come a long way, Polycarp says to them, to the soldiers, and he says, you sit here. He provides them food to eat. And then he knew that they had come to take him away. And Polycarp just asked one request to the soldiers. He said, "Can you just give me 1 hour so that I can go back to my room and I can pray for my people?" And so he goes back to the room. The soldiers allow him. Polycarp returned to his room. He sank on his knees, the wooden floor, and he prayed, and he thought of the church, all the believers, all the suffering that the church was going through. And then he closed his prayer and he came, and then he was taken by the Roman soldiers. And then the next day morning, he was produced in the Roman arena. You know, Romans had such cruel practices, right? They had gladiators to show the display of strength. Wild animals, starved lions were set against people, and that's how they enjoyed sport then. Thankfully, our sport nowadays are much more civilized. And they had brought Polycarp to the arena, and imagine a whole bunch of people are around. And the allegation against Polycarp was this, that he was charged as a traitor, as someone who was against the Roman government. So old man Polycarp, he struggles his way up, and he's there, he's hearing people shout and scream. And one of the Roman proconsuls comes up to him and he says, "I'll release you. You just simply have to declare one thing: Caesar is Lord, and take a pinch of that incense and throw it in the fire. That's all. Okay, just do this one act." Probably I was thinking we may tend to rationalize. In my heart, I follow Jesus. I don't have to. No, an 86-year-old man, and it says, he's saying, "I will release you if you can do one thing. You just simply have to say, Caesar is Lord. And 2, throw that pinch of incense into the fire, and then I will release you." And as he stood there, it says, the 10 commandments, "You shall not call anyone as Lord. Thou shalt," the first 10 commandments comes up to him. And he says this so beautifully. He refuses to do this. And he says, 86 years I have served Christ, and he never did me wrong. How can I blaspheme my King who has saved me?" Right? 86 years, he has never done me wrong. If you trust God like Abraham trusted, God never does wrong. Right? Did Abraham have struggles? He did. And here was Polycarp, and later it says he was tied to the stakes and he was martyred. Nobody remembers the name of the emperor who did this to Polycarp, but the Christian world remembers Polycarp, and the message that he stood for outlives the Roman Empire. The message that we carry, will outlive. If only we will take our stand in Christ. We will not try to linger in the camp of the world and think we are lingering in the house of God. There is no middle ground. You either choose to be in God's camp. It's very beautiful in Abraham's story. God lingered with Abraham. Okay, because he saw in Abraham a man who was set in his heart to please God, a man who pleased God in faith, and he was called father of faith and the friend of God. And he was not even hesitant to hold back his son. Right? Whereas Lot was friends with the world, and he was lingering in the camp of the world. Where are you lingering? God needs people who are wholly devoted to him. That's why Psalmist beautifully says, "Give me an undivided heart." May that be our prayer. Lord, give me an undivided heart. Show me areas in my life, that are not allowing me to live my Christian life to the fullest potential. If you linger in the world, you can never influence the world. Your words about Jesus will be empty words. Will be empty. It will never have power even to move a stone. But if you live a godly life that is wholly devoted to God, uncompromising, choosing the way of the cross, you will be a powerful influence. The world cannot resist, but will have to take you seriously. Maybe it will mock you. Maybe it will jeer at you. All that is possible. But, you will make a lasting impact. Maybe, like Polycarp could have taken the easy way out. Old man, don't you think God in his mercy would have forgiven Polycarp? But he didn't take the easy way out. And today God is asking for people to rise up, Christians who know the truth, to rise up, not to linger anymore in the world. You can't have God and you can't have world. It should be either God or world. You can't have both, or you will be a saved soul and a wasted life. But God didn't come to waste our lives. His sacrifice on the cross was so amazing. Sam Kamalesan said this in one of his sermons. Abraham gave his son on the altar, but God provided a ram. But God so loved the world, he placed his son on the altar, but he never provided a ram. Jesus went to the cross because he remembered you in your filthiness, and he wanted to give you a shot at freedom. That is a powerful message the world needs today. So please, this is my challenge to you and an encouragement to, take God more seriously. Take following God more seriously. We don't need the world. The time is running out. Things are going to change rapidly. And we know God is going to come soon to judge the world like he judged Sodom and Gomorrah. Right? So just want to leave this as a challenge with you, even as you read the book of Genesis. It's very interesting. There are so many more truths from this chapter, but I just wanted to leave this word lingering because that hit me hard as I read this chapter. And I thought I will just today structure everything around lingering and ask you, where are you lingering? And my only encouragement is linger in the camp of God. That will be a blessing to you. Right? Okay, God bless you.